Promising signs that the U.S. banking industry is making due on its promise. 10 of the leading banks that borrowed billions in troubled assets relief funds won approval to pay back $68 billion to taxpayers.
And while we know that we will not escape the worst financial crisis in decades without some losses to taxpayers, it's worth noting that in the first round of repayments from these companies, the government has actually turned a profit.
The Treasury Department, which has overseen $700 billion in Tarp funding, didn't indicate which banks were included in that group. For Washington's efforts in stimulating bank lending and making a profit, this was a small victory. The timing of paybacks will depend on individual banks and the Treasury. Banks are eager to pay back TARP funding to show investors that they're not reliant on government assistance. Separately, the Federal Reserve gave the green light to 10 banks ordered to raise capital after stress tests.
What do you think we should be doing in order to achieve those objectives?
But on Capitol Hill, doubts remained. Congressional Oversight Panel Chair Elizabeth Warren told the Joint Economic Committee of the U.S. Congress that there needs to be longer-term stress tests as banks hold on to appreciating amounts of toxic assets.
There are some positive indicators and there are some negative indicators still in the economy. And that's the best we can do. We can see changes, we try to document those, and we try to point out where there continue to be weaknesses.
Some lawmakers discussed dismantling the panel because it didn't hold hearings with banks and other top banking officials. But Warren said she didn't hold the subpoena power to force them to testify.
That's why we're here to do oversight. That's why we have a special inspector general. That's why we have a congressional oversight panel. We're here to have, in effect, two functions: to call it out when we see it, and as a result, to try to act as a deterrent so there will be less of it.
Whatever organizations there are, like this panel, the oversight panel, they need to have everything that they need to be able to have and create that transparency.
Not only that, previous estimates of the nation's unemployment rate were at 8.9%. It's now at almost 9.5%. Lawmakers say the panel needs revision to lead more accurate studies on bank strengths.
We need to build a very positive road to the future to protect our citizens and the economy. After the Great Depression, many reforms were put in place that gave this country 50 years of prosperity. We need to do the same thing coming out of this crisis, build the road to prosperity with proper regulation and oversight.
The Oversight Panel's future remains uncertain because of its potential, but also because there is still much unknown. The Oversight Panel acknowledged that bank stress tests have a positive effect on market confidence, but cautioned against relying on them. For Press TV, Colin Campbell, Washington.